Well, hello. Welcome to a surprise airing of Cav Live with no Cav Boss. Just James, flying solo tonight. Got my pilot's license and I'm ready to go. Give everybody a few minutes to get in here. See who all wants to come and chit chat and talk. It's going to be a lot of looking at stuff off the camera, driving the mouse, checking my notes, doing all kinds of things. Can you hear me all right? Anybody out there? I had to install a microphone. This has been crazy. Crazy stuff. Speaking of crazy stuff, we're going to talk about what I want to talk about for once. So, man, this is going to be jam-packed with stuff that's just stuff I want. So I hope John's taking notes because this is my Christmas wish list, and I expect you to get it all and get it in order, and I want it ready by December 25th. We Cav Christmas early. Hey, Ilmarin. Glad to see you in here, buddy. It's just going to be you and me probably tonight. So, yeah. John's okay. I am going to answer all the lore questions. Now, whether or not John agrees to that, I'm going to answer everything. I will make up some stuff for you tonight. So you just fire away. I hope somebody's got to transcribe this stuff because this is all going to be legit Cav background. Guaranteed, 100%. Just so everybody knows, John is okay. He's just a little exhausted. Had a really, really tough physical doing stuff day, and he just wasn't up to it. And rather than letting you all go without a show, he decided to, send in the B team and see what could happen. So here we are. Things we're gonna do tonight. Cover some notes I made on Discord. On the Monday night show, I had a list of stuff that people had posted over the weekend that I thought was really interesting. Stuff about APA versus EST and Chameleon. We might touch on that again with a little bit bigger audience. So I went through the Discord and the Facebook real quick and made some notes about the things that I saw that were pretty interesting. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Cav RPG. We're going to talk about this crazy idea I have for the Cav scenario at ReaperCon that I told John I had a great idea, and I guess he must have overlooked it because he never asked me what it was, and this has been a few weeks ago. So now I'm just going to tell everybody, and we're just going to have a good time. Absolutely legit, yes. All right, so like I said, give him a couple more minutes to show up. Life has been pretty good around here. I had a little bit of success painting on Monday. I'm trying to rebuild that green and that yellow Cav scheme that I did a couple of years ago for some Fire Drakes. And so I was able to, I think I'm on the right path with my duelist. Got the green down, fairly good. Need some more, just the usual stuff. A few more highlights, paint the yellows, do some washes, cockpit canopy, gun barrels, little edge highlighting. Probably a logo or a decal or something, because if not, Ross Hines will come out of the woodwork and go, "Bad, James, you're not done. I don't care what they look like. If it doesn't have a decal on it, it's not finished." So that's what's been going on with me. Other Cav activities. So I saw some people posting pictures about playing on a kitchen table, and I'm gonna help those people out with some freebies. I'm gonna send out a few Cavs that I have laying around that are extra. And see if I can't encourage some people to maybe take that little spark of game fire that started and see if I can't get it going into something bigger. That's right, Tiger Wraith. James, just only James. John is just too slow at this stuff. I decided to do the show without him. No, not really. John's just tired as bleep. Had a physically demanding day. Just wore out. He's not a young man. I'm older than him, but that's beside the point. I don't work for a living. I just program. So John asked me at the last minute if I could come on and do a show tonight in his place, and that's what I'm going to do. By gosh, here we are. In fact, we're going to talk about your painting racks. That's on my list, and I'm glad you're here, Tiger Wraith, because we were going to talk about your paint setups and how people do things. I am full of ideas tonight. We're going to launch into it here in just a minute. Just one more minute. 8:05. The train leaves the station, and it ain't coming back until 9 o'clock. But yeah, glad you could join us, Tiger. You are super faithful. I appreciate you and Ilmarin, and usually Cthulhu, and there's a handful of people that are just wonderful. Speaking of wonderful, if you're not on our Discord, you need to come join us because there's some crazy stuff going on over there. With this member who goes by the name Atlas Grove, and he will just ask the most outlandish questions you've ever heard in your life. Earlier in the week, he was talking about using flamethrowers as anti-aircraft weapons and how that worked, and I'm like, I think he was being funny, and I haven't actually checked the rules, but I was like, flamethrowers as anti-aircraft weapons. Could that work? Is that a thing? I don't know. Yeah, oh yeah, Cthulhu. I got your Dino Riders at the top of my list. You don't get to sit there and be quiet. This is starting out with you. All right, it's 8:05. So, from the Discords, all the news that's fit to scribble down at the last minute on my ReaperCon notepad. No, I'm sorry. This is not my ReaperCon. This is even better. This is my Mercenary Bonding Authority notepad. I thought I grabbed the ReaperCon when I grabbed the good stuff. All right. So over on Discord, this guy named Cthulhu, maybe you've talked to him or heard him post or seen him win something once upon a time. I guess he bought a remake of a Dino Riders game. I'd like to hear some more in chat about that, Cthulhu. Being a little bit older than you guys, most of you, I wasn't a kid during the 80s. I was a young man in the Army, things like that. So a lot of these 80s toys that I'm freaking jealous of, that I missed because I was busy working, they're just not a thing out of my childhood. So I'm real curious to see what this is about. I'm going to do some research and check those out. Cav surfing planes are pretty hefty looking, yeah. Well, make sure I say this right. Scud 24. So John educated me, right? It's because when I first got into Cav, I was like, obviously I was attracted by the Cavs, and then I got to looking around after I bought like way too many Simbas, and I saw the airplanes, and I was like, at first I saw the metal ones. That's a whole nother story. The metal planes used to be really underscaled to save on metal costs. That's a whole nother animal. I started seeing the plastic planes, and I was like, John, these things are huge. Are these things out of scale? I mean, have you looked at a Kraken B? That thing is gigantic. Hold on a second. There might be a Kraken B. Yeah, right here. I mean, look at this thing, right? So here's a Kraken B. Hold on. Professional pot. I tell you, this is show and tell. Kraken B. Tiamat. I don't know if you can make those out. I hope you can make them out. Look at that. The Kraken B is bigger than the Tiamat, right? So I thought, by the way, this is my wife's miniatures. I thought those things are scaled wrong. But John educated me, knowing more about this kind of stuff than me. Airplanes are really big. Military airplanes are huge. They're like, even in the modern day, like, modern fighter aircraft are bigger than tanks in terms of their surface area. So I was educated, and yeah, you're right, Scud. Those things they're big. You could definitely balance a Cav on top of one of those airplanes. And that sounds like some Atlas Grove stuff. You're not Atlas Grove from Discord, are you? Because that sounds like the kind of things that he would bring up. I mean, Cav surfing on an airplane. I mean, I'm sure it's not legit in the rules, but man, I would play that scenario in a one-off every day of the week. Chonky planes, yeah. All right, so Cthulhu. And so Dino Riders is an 80s cartoon. I'm not going to ask you to try and explain it because you have to type and it's just too much work. But I'm definitely going to check that out. Those miniatures look pretty freaking cool. I would be very curious to see how they scale. Post up some pictures next to some Cavs or something that we all know what those are like. But yeah, those things look fantastic. I missed out. Apparently toys became much cooler while I was in basic training and stuff like that. So second on my list, Tiger Wraith's paint setup. So I don't know if you guys, again, Discord is the place to be apparently. Tiger Wraith has been sharing some pictures of his reimagining and redesign. I'm not quite sure what the right word is. He's been reworking his paint area, which by the way is like ridiculous. I think he's got more paints than I do, which is frightening to think about. But yeah, it looks really sweet. He's got some racks in there with the stuff all stacked in front of him. The pictures are obviously worth 1,000 words. I'm not going to try and describe his setup. I'm just saying, Tiger Wraith has got a really neat setup, better than mine in my opinion. Although I think I have more room than him, so I spread out. I have 5 projects sitting around at once, so I blame my wife. It's really her fault. But that being said, I know John has been tinkering around with some MDF paint racks. He hasn't posted up too many. I've heard him talk about them a little bit. None of them are up for sale yet. I haven't seen a production copy of one yet. Really, he shared a picture once, but I wasn't sure if it was an early or whatever. They're not ready for sale yet. But I'm very curious about those because I definitely could use some help getting my paints organized. So keep your eye out for that. I mean, John's got 2 gigantic MDF cutters now. After he had to order the second one in to support the Badger production. When the first one it stubbed its toe. And so he's got this gigantic MDF cutting capacity. I'm real curious to see what he does with it. Paint racks are a great idea. I mean, the miniature holders I use the one that he gave me when I've got a taller figure. The ones that were part of the Cav swag bags. Those are pretty interesting. I'm curious to see what he does. I know for sure, and you probably already know this, but for those who might not have put 3 and 2 together or might not have heard it before, so John has got a license to make MDF terrain from Thunderhead Studios. It's a thing that he built for BattleTech, but John's changing it around to fit Cav, and that's all going to be in MDF, and it's going to be amazing. I can't remember the name of the set that his other vendors sell, but anyway, just go to Thunderhead Studios Twitch channel and you can find all the details you want about this terrain that we are going to get. Again, you'll see it in BattleTech format, but we're going to get it in Cav, and I'm excited for that. MDF all the way. Tiger Wraith, I have some bad news for you. Okay, Scud, sorry, I just the question you asked about serving planes was in Atlas Grove's in his wheelhouse. So I was wondering, maybe this is the same person. This whole 2 name things in 3 different places it's too much for an old man. But yeah, Tiger Wraith. Let's talk about. No, Ilmarin, I'll come to you in a second. Let me just give Tiger Wraith some bad news. Children never move out. It doesn't really happen. It's like kind of like the Loch Ness Monster. People talk about it, they take pictures of it. You see these weird images across the wave of children like leaving your house, but no, it's not a thing. It doesn't really work like that. So I'm not sure I would make too many serious plans along that 15-year-old moving out. Tiger Wraith, you only think they have. Trust me, lurking in the shadows, deep in the corners, somewhere outside the periphery of your vision, those children are still around. Your time's coming, buddy. I promise you. Your time's coming. So, Ilmarin, you mean TT Combat. So, I do not, right? So, TT Combat is a company that makes their own terrain that John carried for a while. I think he's still got some of it, but he's basically discontinued it as a product line on his store. I could be wrong. I'm 100% right. Everything I say tonight is right. John's not here to correct me. So yeah, TT Combat is a company that has their own terrain line that John was carrying for a while. It's really super good stuff. Don't get me wrong. I bought a ton of it, and then when he put it on sale, I bought more. But it's something that Thunderhead Studios has put together for the BattleTech crowd, and John licensed it for us Cav folks. So the name of it eludes in my head. I know it's kind of like a high-tech fortressy city-looking thing, but that's coming, and it's definitely not a TT Combat product. So you have that to look forward to. Next time you have John on the Twitchiverse, you should get him to talk about it in detail. Oh, you mean the TT Combat stuff, Tiger Wraith? Yeah, you're right. I think it is a UK product, but John was being a business. He brought in a ton of it to sell, and like I said, I've got a stack of it out in the garage waiting to be assembled, along with 1 or 2 other things that might be waiting to be assembled. And I too feel the same way, Tiger Wraith. If I ever get so lucky as to have a departure from my domicile of one of the daughters, I anticipate expanding gaming space quickly so they can't move back. That's my goal. All right, down the list. So Party Bear occasionally drops in. He's a streamer that supports Cav, likes Cav. Just recently bought, like, I think one of every rock product there is, as far as I know. And he's been killing it. Oh my God, he posts on Discord, and of course he's got his Twitch channel. So he's into Stargrave, which is another favorite subject of mine, but we're not going to turn this into the Stargrave channel. But he's just been painting up like a model a day and just killing it. They look great. They're vibrant. They're kind of, I don't know, sort of retro punky sort of look. They're bright colors. It's not like grim dark future, rusty metal, oily trash sort of things, or globulous green. I just love them. I'm excited. I hope one day I get a chance to play that guy. I would love to play some Stargrave or Cav. Better yet, maybe even Cav with Party Bear. But check out our Discord. He's posting up some really good images over there. Trinity City, you nailed it. That's it, Tiger Wraith. Trinity City, you're 100% right. Ding, 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 ding. 3 points to Tiger Wraith and Door. Sorry about that. Okay, Atlas Grove, this guy that I've been talking about, he posted up a question over in Discord. How much does a Dictator Bee cost? And I think his question was, how much would it cost in like US dollars? And so, of course, me being a smart butt, I posted a link to where you can buy them on Talon Games' website for $5.99. I don't think that's really what he meant. That's the kind of crazy, zany tangents we end up over there with. And if you get a chance, drop in and enjoy the comedy. Flamethrowers for anti-aircraft and buying Dictator Bees in real life. Gosh, how much would it cost? I don't know. I mean, it's technology we don't have. I don't know. I mean, it's the size of an airplane, so expensive airplane money, I'm guessing. I don't know. How much is an expensive airplane? $100 million per unit? So $250 million for a Dictator Bee, maybe? All right. Yeah, seriously. All right. So then Dave C over on Discord, he was talking. He participated over the weekend in a multiplayer game, a 3-person game. And that got me to thinking, because I think his experience and my experience in general is that a 3-sided game usually ends up in 2 of the sides ganging up against the other. And I was wondering, how do you manage that? I mean, in miniature game, well, I mean, honestly, in any game, board games or card games or miniature games, but in our case in Cav, how would you go about managing that? How would you balance a 3, 4, 5, 6-player game? I mean, and so when you have, let me back up. That's probably the wrong thing to say. I think really the easiest way to handle it is to just form 2 sides. So I mean, if you only have 3 people, and let's just say you're playing 3,000 points, right? You got 3,000 points on one side and 2 1,500 point forces on the other. I'm not sure how the activation works for that. I don't know. There's a lot of interesting things you could do. You could make the 2 1,500 point players play a little points down, but give them each a full set of activation cards, so that they might out-activate the other guy or lady by a card or 2 in a full deck. I don't know. There's a lot of options there. I'd be real curious to, obviously, again, we're not having a dialogue here, so it's hard for you guys to type in your thoughts, but come over to Discord or start a conversation on Facebook. How do you manage multiplayer battles like that? What's the best way to handle that? I mean, is it, if you just literally go 3 guys, 1,000 points on, for everybody, it seems to me like one guy hangs back and cleans up, or the first person that goes out to attack gets ganged up on by the other 2. It doesn't seem like that great a thing. So here's something I've seen other games do, right? Atomic Mass Games, Marvel Crisis Protocol, to handle those kinds of situations, what they did is they made a different sort of a variation of their basic game. So instead of playing, me versus you, what they did is they created like a giant menace, right? So they would take like a rampaging Hulk, from the Marvel universe, and they would beef him up and give him all kinds of rules and things he could do and objectives and part of things in the scenario he was trying to accomplish in his rage, and then you and your partners played some smaller subset of heroes to try and stop him from destroying the city, right? So you could do something along those lines, right? I think you could play a scenario where the two smaller forces were more of like a recon force, and they were just trying to get in close and extract some data, do some scans, pick up like a package that needed to be gotten away with. You could make rules for detection, and you could turn it into sort of like a stealth game at that point. What other sorts of things you could do? PlanetSide has it so the two side gang up on the third, and the third loses territory. Less territory the third has, the less opportunities to fight them, and the more places to fight each other for the first two. Interesting. Yeah, okay. Interesting. So I guess, I'd really, PlanetSide is a video game, right? I think, Scud? If I got that right? I have to check that out and see how they do that. That seems like it could be interesting. The other thing, and I was tinkering around with this earlier in the year, late last year when I was painting up that giant multi-legged model, not a cav model, that I was calling the Rock AI. You could make like a big super unit, right? It could be, just not to that scale, maybe to that scale, I don't know. It could be Godzilla, right? Not literally Godzilla because copyright, but that's sort of a big menace, right? Something stomping up out of the oceans, fell out of the sky, escaped from some crazy rock artificial intelligence lab, and just menacing the player characters. And it has like either a person driving it with some rules or some abilities. I think personally that would be a really fun way to play Cav. Like some uber death weapon that comes out of nowhere, and the two or three units that are there represented by like me and Tiger Wraith and Ilmarin or Scud or whoever, we have to try and stop it, and we don't really understand what it does. To me, I think there's a really fun game there, right? So because it's not part of the Cav universe, we don't really know what its abilities are, right? And so you could, as the game designer, you could give the thing non-Cav abilities, right? Things it can do that are outside the normal scope of Cav. And maybe if you didn't have an extra player to run it, you could even make a little card-driven AI for it to take actions and do things. And your goal as the players opposing it would be to kind of like touch it, tag it to see how it reacts, to figure out how to manipulate it. And I think come up, scan it, go over and make a lot of noise, try and lure it off in another direction. It'd be fun to have to sort of it's really a black box, right? So inside it are some rules and some motivations, and you as the players don't know what they are, and so you have to experiment to try and figure out how to deal with it without enraging it or exposing yourself to it so that you end up getting destroyed. I think there's a fun little, maybe even a solo game there, right? You could potentially create a deck of cards that would control the menace, and then you could play your Cav forces against it. I think there's some possibilities there. But that's also a big first-person shooter game, so a bit different from tabletop. Yes, definitely. I didn't realize it was. Yeah, it makes sense. Planets. I've heard of that. Yeah, it's been a while, but yeah, definitely a first-person shooter. All right, so multiplayer games, interesting. Of course, it would have been nice if we could have thought this through before the whole COVID thing hit, because it would have been a wonderful sort of thing to have ready to release to people. For playback, before, back when nobody could get together for any reason because of the virus. Would have been nice to have this sort of solo AI driven game where you could set up on a kitchen table and just play against the big monster, the big kaiju or whatever, whatever kind of menace it would be. All right, so that's all the notes I had from Discord. I checked Facebook and I saw one very interesting thing from James Smith Jr. He's a regular poster over there. I don't know him. I only know a handful of you in person. So I'm not sure who James Smith Jr. is, but he had a really good idea. basically he was listening to last week's Wednesday episode, and it gave him this idea to run an RPG game where the players played smugglers who are supplying the Rock with stuff that they need from outside of their own civilization, right? So to me, the super fun part about that is you've got you've got these people kind of caught in the middle, right? They're doing something that's illegal or immoral, may not be the right word. Anyway, the non-Rock side of the universe would look at these smugglers and go, "What the heck are you doing?" Very few of them are going to look at people selling stuff, military weapons, hardware, equipment, supplies to the Rock in any kind of favor. Certainly none of the Terrans, none of the Templars probably. The Malvernans have fought the Rock a number of times. The Aidenese, the Rock are a pain in their side. The Ritter, I'm assuming the Ritter have fought the Rock at some point in time. I'm pretty sure everybody have fought the Rock. The Almirathil fought the Rock? I mean, probably. I don't remember reading anything about that. That's interesting. So you've got this smuggler band in Mr. Smith's campaign idea, right? And so on the one side, the side where they live, almost certainly, they're doing a thing that nobody would approve of. Hey, we're secretly selling military technology to the Rock, okay? On the Rock side, you've got the Rock. So you're like, you have to, I don't know what the terms of engagement would be there, whether you have to be polite or deferential or big and boisterous and seem brave and strong and smart, or you got to beat him in a drinking game. I don't know, but this is definitely a complicated game these smugglers are playing. I mean, they've got to not get destroyed by the Rock, not have the Rock come in and just go, "Oh well, we're just going to take this stuff and kill you," or whatever, right? I mean, so like the little things, right? So if the smugglers, if they show up in a ship that is, especially like a shiny new spaceship they just bought with all their money they earned, do the Rock look at it and go, "Well, we'll just take that and keep all your stuff"? And now, so they got to remember to like not wear their best spaceship to the Rock exchange, and at the same time they got to make sure the Templars and the Terrans don't find out they're selling the stuff to the Rock, and they got to make a profit and deal with just the regular everyday other problems that you run into. I think it's a fantastic idea. I mean, there's everything you need. I fought the Rock and the Rock won. That's hilarious hobby habit. Absolutely. That's. I think most races could probably say that at one point in time or another. But I mean, there's it's like a teeter-totter, right? You got the smugglers sitting there on the crux, the lever between the two sides of the teeter-totter, and they got to move over into non-Rock space and find stuff to buy or steal or pick up or however they acquire their goods. And I'm sure the Rock don't make it easy. The Rock are like, we want a brand new chieftain. We want like a squadron of chieftains, and we want like some Tiamats, and we want a Krakens are a Rock. Just stuff that it's like hard to get, right? And so now they got to find a way to go get this stuff, and not only steal it or acquire it or buy it or whatever they do in, let's say, Terran space, and then they got to move it from Terran space to wherever they're gonna meet the Rock, and then they have to, like as I said, they have to make sure the Rock don't decide it's better to just take all the stuff and go home. So and are you even really dealing with the Rock? I kind of think John insinuated that they're in Rock society. There's stratifications of people, right? So you got the big lead warriors, the people we think of as the Rock, the people who are like all about warfare. They're training all the time. They're practicing. They're sharpening their skills. They're driving their calves. They're flying their airplanes. They're doing all that stuff. The warrior class, or whatever you call them in Rock society. And then I think you have certainly subjugated races. Again, this is where we need John, because I don't know. Are there people that are Rock, that are farmers, that are merchants who would trade with these smugglers, or is it these subjugated races that have come to find a way to prosper inside the context of rock culture, so that they can are those the people that are doing the swapping, the trading, the bartering with these merchants? Man, I'm telling you, just that paragraph that Mr. Smith wrote, James Smith Jr., that's an entire campaign book. I think you could approach that. You could write that up in nice detail as a campaign book. Match it with that year zero set of rules that I think John's going to use for the Cav RPG, and I think you're good to go right there. All right, I think that's an awesome thing. Yeah, Ilmran, I agree. Got the rock, then the pebble. Okay, that's it. Clever, Scud. I like it. I like it. Yeah, there is another cast, I'm pretty sure. Maybe multiple casts. I don't honestly know. So let's talk about that sort of structure to. Let me rephrase that. So Mr. Smith's idea kind of, I think, segues nicely into some ideas I've had. Again, these are strictly my ideas, right? These are not John's ideas. These are not approved ideas. These are just ideas I'm throwing against John's wall to see if any of them stick. And so here's kind of my take on the Cav RPG, right? So, I mean, in a traditional sense, when I think of an RPG of any kind, I think of a core set of rules to run the game by, something to create characters with, and then you need a veritable mountain of background material. Like in fantasy realms, you need a world guide and a mythology or a set of mythologies, and you need countries and kingdoms and historical events and monsters, and there's just this tremendous amount of writing to really have a snapshot of the world that you can hand to a referee and have her or him, take that mountain of information and turn it into something that people love, in terms of a game. Honestly, if we wait for that to happen, I think that's the wrong approach to take with the Cav RPG. So instead, here's my take, and it's really the take I think that Mr. Smith has stumbled into as well. Instead of trying to build out the universe, like, do we get, let's get a book, or at least a section of a book that tells us what the Aidenese are like, what their culture's like, what their society's like, their space, names their planets, talks about their stuff, this is like, that's a mountain of information. And then you've got the other factions to do it for too. Instead, I think what you do is you take a story, right? Like Mr. Smith's smuggler story, and you make a book around that, right? And you just include in the book the parts that you need to tell that story, okay? So in his case, right, character creation is about smugglers, right? So you're going to need part of the buy-in here is, as players of this particular RPG supplement, you agree to play some kind of a devious, underhanded, smugglery kind of person, right? There's still plenty of room in there to make any kind of character that you want for the most part, but you have to be willing to be a smuggler or have been trapped into that role. So somehow you are, as a player, happy to play somebody who works in this smuggling crew, right? And then the author or the authors of the book, they have an arc, a story arc, right? And you just include in the book the things you need for that, right? So some simple character creation stuff, enough to cover all the races. You've only got a handful of career paths there for people to build their characters out of, because you're smugglers. You're gonna fit in some kind of a sphere there. You may have some, like, you might be a former CEO who has knowledge of crazy stuff, but currently you're a smuggler, and so you're going to fit in this space that's a smuggler, right? And then so we need to know about the Rock because you're selling people stuff to the Rock. So the book contains a section about the Rock, and especially about the secondary cast that does the dealings with the smugglers, and maybe talks about like the warlord who they serve and what he's like, and just a little bit about his connections. Not enough to warrant an entire book, because this has all got to fit in one, I don't know, 60-page book, 50, 40, 90, whatever number of pages it is. It's got to fit in one book. And then the smugglers obviously have to have a source of stuff, right? Maybe there's a corrupt supply chain that they're interacting with, or they they just buy stuff from pirates and mercenaries. I don't know. Somehow in the story that stuff fits, but the whole crux of the idea here is we get a book that tells a story. As part of the book, you get some rock background, you get some Terran background. Ogre Captain, welcome in. Hello. Hello, Hobby Hobbit. Anyway, sorry, I forgot to look down for a while. I got to talking. Yeah, well, the Hobby Hobbit, it's not really a one-shot adventure, because I wouldn't imagine this story would play out in an evening, right? It's a campaign, right? I don't know, 6 sessions, 12 sessions, maybe more, something, where there's like, there's a story. It's the equivalent of a movie, or maybe a couple of 2 or 3 movies in terms of the scope of the story, right? But to me, the thing that's relevant here is the structure that we can produce these sort of products in, right? So whatever the story is, it's the Cav smuggling equivalent of the Lord of the Rings, right? Maybe that's too big. We'll go with the first Lord of the Rings book, all right? Or one of the Harry Potter books or something like that, right? It's got a story. It starts here. There's a menace. There's something going on. It comes to a conclusion. There's discovery and a few open ends at the end, right? So we make a book that covers that. It talks about the bits and pieces you need to run that story. And at the end of the day, when you buy that book, you've got more fluff than you had before. It's not an encyclopedia about the rock, but it's a start, right? So then you produce another one. You tell a different story, from a different perspective. I don't know, make something up, right? Now you go over to Almirathil and you tell a story, or you become a Templar banker and there's something going on with that, right? You have to have, your movie plot, right? You got to have your 3 acts, or however you decide to break your story up. But the crux of the matter is we build the encyclopedia of the Cav universe in these campaign slices. So you don't have to wait for John to detail every facet of Aedenese and Almirathil and Ritter and all the other things that honestly we would love to have. You can get like a shot of caffeine. You can get a shot of stimulant to get you going. Here's this thing. Now you know more about Terrans and rock than you did before. Okay, and now the next one is some Aedenese and some Almirathil crap. Here's an injection of stuff about that, and there's a story to be played. You may have to make up new characters. You might not be able to make your smuggler fit in the other story, but at the end of the day, kind of like the old journals of recognition, you've got a book in your hand, self-contained, tells a story, has background, touches into the year 0 stuff, and then of course a clever group of players will sit down and just expand from there, right? I mean, you don't have to play everything canon. You could decide that the Rock and the Terrans find a way to overcome their differences and work together in the context of your story, and John says that would never happen, but as long as you and your group are having a good time, go for it. You know what I mean? Decaf. I'm just, I got to keep going, right? It's been a long day. I love helping John out. This is fantastic. But man, this is a bad day for me. I started out like poop, and I got to work, and it was just everybody was needy, and they said stuff was broke when it wasn't. They just didn't bother looking, and then I'm trying to learn a new software language, and it's weird. Let me share you just a little my insight about that, just super duper quick, right? So I'm going to make an analogy here because I don't know how many of you are programmers, right? But I'm pretty sure you've all written papers. You either wrote papers in high school, or you wrote papers in college, or maybe you write papers, some kind of writing all the time. Maybe you write reports at your work. So in my head, I know how to program. I know how to break problems up into logical pieces. I speak a certain set of languages that I know how to very rapidly turn those ideas into programs. So in other words, in a paper, right? I know how to write a paper in English. I'm actually pretty good at writing papers. When I put my mind to it, thank God I don't have to do it anymore. I could do it in English. I know how to form the arguments. I know how to write the words. I know how to put the things together, the paragraphs, the thesis, the whole 9 yards. This is like doing it in Spanish, right? So you tell me, James, you got to write a paper in Spanish. I don't speak Spanish, but I know how to write papers. I know how to write in English. So in my head, I write the thing in English and then I translate it into Spanish. That's what I'm doing at work right now. I'm learning a new language so I can do this thing for work, and it's crazy because I can go 1,000 miles an hour this direction in English, paper English, But now I got to go this way, and I'm going through molasses, and it's frustrating because I know exactly what to do this direction, but it's like dead end, dead end. Doesn't work that way. You can't do that here. I'm like, ah. Anyway, there we go. All right, so back to Cav RPG. All right, so we talked about my vision for breaking the mountain of information that we all want up into these palatable chunks that you can actually do something with, right? I mean, we would all love it if John released the A to E source book, but there's nothing to play there, right? I want a scenario. I want stories, right? When I buy the book, I want to be able to open it up and go, okay, I'm going to play a paladin, and I'm going to have long years, and I'm going to do this thing over here. That's who I am. That's what I'm doing. And so that's kind of my way of chopping this gigantic problem up into smaller pieces that we can put out, and Cav can, Talon Games can sell, and we can all rejoice for having. All right, I'll put a period on that. Take a deep breath, because now I'm going to talk about my vision for ReaperCon and the Cav game at ReaperCon. All right, so it's not so much a story as it is a visual, right? So to me, ReaperCon it's a very artsy place, right? I mean, there's lots of people that are super talented painters. I mean, ridiculously talented painters, beautiful miniatures, dioramas, giant dragons, the whole nine yards, right? There's just so much to do there. It's just very artsy, and so I thought, all right, so if we bring this Cav RPG to ReaperCon, I mean, what does an RPG look like? It looks like a bunch of people sitting around a table, probably having a good time, drinking something, rolling some dice. Occasionally you might hear a guffaw or somebody making an explosion noise, and that's it, right? It's not eye-catching. And so this is ReaperCon, right? Where people go to show off. So, ready for a CavCon. Ogre Captain? Wow, you don't need to talk. Ogre Captain is a programmer, though he doesn't do it anymore. And he's ready for a CavCon. Me too. But for now, cross our fingers, we'll get some kind of Cav thingy at ReaperCon. It's another story. Back to my vision. So I want to do something visual. Still a role-playing game, don't get me wrong, still a role-playing game, but something visual. And so I have this crazy idea, right? So I don't know, for those of you that were part of the virtual CavCon we did a month or three ago with Tiger Wraith and Master Guns, Todd Farnholtz and John and myself and all that, and Chris Lewis. John, so I made up a pretend game. I made up sort of Rocket League for Cav, right? It's just a miniatures game so we could fill some time and have a little bit of fun. And I made up this thing called Cav Ball, which is like pachinko soccer, all right? And we got up there and I painted the miniatures, and John 3D printed the soccer balls for me. And at the last minute, John went like super luminary MDF god, and he made this just spectacular, like etched, carved Cav Ball board, right? It was amazing, and he made it in one night, and we painted it basically in one night. Me and Todd and John got it all painted and laid out, and John made stencils. It's fantastic. It's amazing looking. And so I thought to myself, we got all this MDF capacity. What could we do? So here's my idea. Cut to the chase, all right? So we got a tabletop full of terrain. The terrain is this, right? It's the interior of a giant ship that's too big that we can't represent. So this is kind of like a Star Wars scene, right? So it's basically like the landing bay that the Badgers launch out of, right? So the table has got this MDF surface that John cuts out for us, etches, lasers, we paint, looks fantastic. It's got a Badger in it and some of the 28 millimeter, the big Dictator, maybe even a Starhawk if we're lucky, as terrain pieces, right? As part of, standing there in this bay, right? We build up some sides. We make some, and this is a miniatures game, right? I'm talking about a miniatures game, a RPG miniatures game. So around the edge of this surface that John makes for the Badger to park on is, like some terrain to climb on and hide on, maybe gangways or just, it's a 3D space that we physically made and painted and brought together and put on the table. And this is where, of course, the scenario concludes. This is like the crescendo of the scenario. It happens here. It's some sort of like, well, you've all seen Star Wars, where Luke and Leia and Han and Chewbacca are trying to get to the Millennium Falcon, escape the Star Destroyer. Ben fights Darth Vader. It's in that spirit of things, right? It's flamboyant. It's big. This terrain stuff is going to look amazing because of it's just going to stand out, right? It's going to have giant 1.5 or 12-inch tall giant calves in it, right? Fully painted, badger sitting there, maybe more than one badger, who knows? And in the meantime, you got your miniatures and you're running around and we're role playing and shooting, and that's what it looks like. I don't even care what the story is at this point in time. That's my vision for what we should do at ReaperCon. Tiger Wraith, I apologize if I forgot to mention you. I could have swore I mentioned you. Yes, you did. You helped a lot. Don't take it the wrong way. I'm sorry. So yeah, something big and flamboyant, visually speaking, for ReaperCon. I think that's the right way to go. I mean, when John sets up as a Cav vendor, right, as Talon Games, I mean, he sets out at least one table full of just really good looking terrain, like the pyramid thing that he worked on earlier in the year at the end of last year. We went in and built like the thing, the terrain and the entire board of stuff that was all custom built and fit and colored together, coordinated. Looks fantastic. If he's going to do an RPG at a convention, I don't see how he can't. I mean, he's already set the standard, right? He's got to live up to his own standard, and that standard includes beautiful 3D terrain to play the game on. I think it's a natural. That's my pitch to John. He's the first, if he's listening, which I don't know if he is. That's the first time he's heard that. So cross our fingers that it doesn't bounce off or pass all the way through between his ears. Hopefully he likes the sound of some of it, because let's put it like this: if I didn't know anything about Cav, if I didn't know anything about Talon Games, and I walked into a convention and I saw that kind of a setup and people standing around, having a good time, rolling dice, moving their figures, pew-pewing at each other, I would be in rapture. I'd be standing there going, how do I get me some of this? And I think that's the way that you sell the Cav RPG. You go big. It's not just a bunch of people sitting around looking at a book and rolling some dice and describing how they're going to backstab the rock, like making their sneak roll. I think it's big. It's Star Wars big. It's giant. That's what we need to do. Working on your new file server. Yeah. Ilmarin, one of these days, I really hope we get a chance to meet, because I'm actually, in reality, I'm pretty quiet. I am. I would just sit around the whole day and listen carefully and take notes in my head about what's going on. But, every once in a while I get wound up. If I find something that catches my attention, I can be very, very enthusiastic about things. So, here I am. Apparently I like Cav. Who would have ever figured? Oh, novelizations of the Cav universe. Yes, definitely, Ogre Captain. There have been. I know for a fact John has talked about to a couple of different writers. Just hasn't found one that really clicked with his vision of the universe. Obviously, I'm not John. I can't speak for John, but I think John has a very, in his mind, he can see Cav, right, and he knows what fits in the Cav lane and what doesn't, and he just hasn't found a writer that can see his vision and they can come together on a number, because Talon Games is a pretty small place. So that hasn't happened, but it is definitely something we all know we want and need, is novelizations about the Cav universe. I would love that. That being said, so apologies, Ogre Captain, I don't recognize your Twitch handle. So if you're new, welcome in. Glad to have you. If you're not, I'm sorry I don't recognize you. I don't I just have a terrible memory for such things, so my apologies. That being said, so John on Facebook recently, John is Cab Boss, by the way, in case you don't know. He recently made a post that encouraged people to come in and ask questions, and he committed to picking his 10 favorite questions, preferably fluffy questions, not like how does ECM work. And although I guess you could probably ask that if you really wanted to. And he committed to writing up like 1,000-word answer to your question, to his 10 favorites, so that he could start to get some fluff out there, some more information, some stuff for us to consume. And I encourage you all to go find those Facebook posts. They're in the Cav Strike Ops HQ group and the Cav support group, I believe. Go find those, or come over and ask those questions on Discord, so we can get some really juicy ones in there. I mean, I am really looking forward to seeing John answer some of our questions about, Rock Debate Club and things like that. Oh, all right. So we're winding down. We got about 10 minutes left. I feel like I'm doing all the talking here for the most part, for once. And if you guys have anything you want to talk about, I'm here to give you completely unofficial answers to your Cav questions. You ask me a Cav question, I will tell you the answer, and it won't mean anything because it won't be what John goes with. But I will make something up just to say that you finally got your fluff questions answered. So fire away. Yeah, Ogre Captain. Well, welcome in. We're glad to have you, John. John recently made up the Badger for us. It's a variation on an old metal model that he had laying around. His name eludes me. Tiger Wraith probably knows it. Sweet Cthulhu. I'm looking forward to seeing that T-Rex next to the Cav, and it's done. I kind of hate you in some ways, but in the best way possible, of course. So yeah, well, welcome in, Ogre Captain. Get yourself a Badger, put it together, paint it up. I'll just remind everybody, out of my own pocket, I've given away one, and I still have one to give away. I have a $25 Talon Games gift certificate for the first fully painted Badger that I see on Facebook or Discord. And of course, it's my money, so I get to decide what I consider to be fully painted. I gave away one for the first fully assembled one, and I believe Cthulhu may have won that. What was the miniature? Tiger Wraith, what miniature is the Badger based on? I mean, it's literally like an old metal dropship or something, isn't it? I've got one around here somewhere. Anyway, back to the thing. So, paint up a Badger, post it. The first one that I like, that I consider to be fully painted, I will send you a gift code for $25 out of my own pocket. Just because I am excited, and I like to get other people excited about this sort of stuff, and the Badger is fantastic. I've got 2 of them over there. Just haven't assembled them yet for some reason. I don't model enough, apparently. So the small thing is called the Badger as well? No, so Ilmarin, I know what the Hedgehog is, and it's not the Hedgehog, although they're kind of similar. Tiger Wraith, the old model is called the Badger as well. I just know it was so this model I'm thinking of, it's basically the Badger, but it was a tabletop model instead of like so the MDF Badger is about this big. And of course the earlier Cav model is about that big. And so it was a playable model that you could put on the table. Yeah, come on, Ilmarin. Don't make it a race now. Come on. You don't want to show me up that bad, right? By the way, I think I own about 20 hedgehogs. Don't ask me why. I just kept picking them up in trade back when I was first getting into this game. All right, come on. Ask me a fluff question. I'm going to give you an answer. Come on. It might make it into the thing. I'm helping John develop the Cav RPG, so if you can come up with, I will find a way to sneak that puppy in, right? Maybe it'll be every other word in the last paragraph of the book on the rock. If you take it out of context, it'll mean the thing that you and I agree it means, right here. Yes, the broadsword is based off the Tsar. Tiger Wraith, the Tsar was my holy grail of Cav models when I first got into this game. I just loved the way it looked, sleek, swept. It's just beautiful. And of course, they were only made in metal. And so they weren't available anymore, so I hunted high and low. I finally found 2 of them. I have 2 metal Tsars. So by the way, out there, if you have a metal Tsar from the early Cav days, hit me up. I will pay you good money for it. I'm still looking for more of them. A hover troop transport. All right. Come on, folks. This is your chance to get completely unofficial Cav Fluff answers. I mean, what is the favorite sport on Almirathal? What is it they do for a hobby? What is it they do for a pastime? You could find out if you just ask the question. You have 2 metal badgers, but do you have metal czars? Come on, Tiger Wraith, I want the czars. I have a metal badger. I think I have one. I got it off of Dragon. Name eludes me. Gosh, I can't believe I can't think of his name. Smog, that's it. Yeah, that's who I got my badger from, and I don't think he's parting with any czars if he has any. I've tried. Why are the export versions of Ritter models better than their own versions? Well, so here's all right. Why are the export? First of all, that's an opinion. Let's just establish that. That's an opinion, but we'll assume your opinion is true. Why are the export versions of Ritter models better than their own versions? I think the reason is that they actually export the base version, but the Almirathil modify them, right? So when they get those Tigers in, right? Tigers is the big railgun or Mac 2 Mac thingy, right? I probably got one right over there. Anyway, I think what happens is they ship them the base ones, maybe even kind of stripped down, or like without some of the components, because I mean the Almirathil are not just going to literally lift this thing off of a crate and turn it on and pilot it. They don't trust the Ritterlich either, right? So I think what happens is they get these things in and they strip them down and they go through the software, they purge the software probably, they check the thing for bugs and ECM stuff and that kind of thing, and then they put them back together and they make their own variation. And I think the Almirathil are they're good. They build a better version of the Ritterlich model than the Ritterlich have. I'm not sure why the Ritterlich. Maybe the Ritterlich are like in that era, where their production facilities are set up to make this particular model in this particular way, and they've reached an economy of scale. But I think the Almirathil take those kind of raw materials and tweak them and make them better. And I think that's why the export versions are better than what the Ritterlich actually use. Which race makes the universally loved alcohol? What is the Romulan ale of Cav? All right, let's think about this, all right? So, my first instinct is to say rock, but I'm going to go a different direction, right? So the Malvernans, to me, they're this quiet, unassuming race. We don't hear a lot about them. They make some beautiful tanks. That's 100% for sure. And you know what you brew alcohol in? You brew it in tanks. Different kind of tank, but I think that's what's going on. Plus, the Malvernans are kind of I believe I read they're kind of a subterranean race, right? So I think they're particularly good at making alcohol out of this fungus that they find deep, like within their home system, like that grows sort of like in Minecraft. When you find the mushrooms that are growing up in the deep part of the cave when you're trying to mine out diamonds. I think they make it out of that mushroom that's never seen the sun, right? And so that's the alcohol they make. It's something about never seeing the sun, because once you drink it, you're likely to never see the sun again. So it's definitely the Malvernans, absolutely. Or also Adon, so they both have had some of this tech longer than Ritter. Yeah, I agree with you completely, Tiger Wraith. 2 fun questions. Hold on, what was the one above that? Hold on, I see the one about Romulan ale. There's 2 fun questions for me. Lions and tigers, why not? Oh, lions and tigers, why not bears? Well, they have lions and tigers, why not bears? Why not bears? So, I mean, clearly, the lion and tiger thing is really like a Terran designation for whatever they really call their own model, right? So really what you're asking is, why did the Terrans not name one of their vehicles the bear? That is a really good question. So I'm just going to go with an old school answer, right? So when the Terrans first encountered the Ritterlich and they were basically going through it and starting to name this, what you had some Green Bay Packer fans, the descendants of Green Bay Packer fans, who just can't stand bears, right? They're just anti-Chicago. It's a thing that hasn't. It's probably not even American football. Probably hasn't been a thing in the Cav universe in a while. But it's just built deep into their roots, and so they were naming things, and they said, "Hey, we should call this one the Bear." And suddenly, all the heads in the room turned at that person and said, "No bears," and that's why we don't have a bear in the Ritterlich lineup. There we go. Yes, the Almirathil have the Bears. So maybe there was a Bears fan that managed to survive when it came time to name the Almirathil stuff. All right, folks, it's 9 o'clock. An hour's worth of nothing but me talking. It's like coconut donut time or something. I got to get out of here. So, to summarize the schedule for the rest of the week, I suspect we're going to have Chris Lewis come on Saturday around 2 o'clock Central Standard and do some sculpting. I haven't had a chance to watch that in a while. Saturdays have been swamped for me in May, but hopefully in June things will slow down a little bit. I'll get the chance to watch. I really enjoy that. That guy really knows what he's doing. I literally, this is a truism. I have, now that I've actually met a sculptor, I pay a little more attention to the attributions, the sculptors. I have so many models that are in my list of favorites that he has made. It's ridiculous. So Chris, thank you very much for your hard work. You have made some of my favorite models. Check him out if you get a chance. He will answer your questions. He's super good at what he does. He's an expert as far as I'm concerned. Monday, I'll be back on doing some painting. I'll be working on my force for the Tulsa Slow Grow League, which is coming up here in, I guess, a couple of weeks. So I need to get off of my butt and get my painting ramped up, because then I got to get another squad done 2 weeks after that. And then John will be back on Tuesday, hopefully, assuming he feels up to it. And then Wednesday, me and John. It's a whole week's worth of Cav stuff. All right. Worked on the eagle last week. Sweet. Man, we need some other names. I mean, we're going to run out of animals at some point. Not really. I guess that's it. The one thing I would say is the same thing I say at the end of my Monday show every time. Be good. Just go out in the world and make somebody smile, especially if it's somebody that you wouldn't normally interact with. Just be good to people. You all take care. Talk to you later.